All right, so back to Plato. And now we're going to move to the allegory of the cave part of the excerpt, which is the same story as the divided line. Why the same story twice? Because math doesn't excite the soul. That's why. Math, remember, is here. Mathematical objects and so forth is here. Everyone can understand intellectually the stuff that Plato is talking about. But not everyone can, I don't want to use the word feel, not everyone can experience it in their soul. Not everyone's soul can understand and perceive what Plato is talking about. Some can. The ones that can are the ones that might be born philosophers. And so he tells the story, the allegory, because allegories are more soul-touching, I'll say. They speak the language of the soul, even though it's still using words, because it's using words, it's also using imagery, which neither one by themselves is great, but it's the best that we've got. And so by painting this particular picture for us, giving us this particular story, something in our soul may be awakened, and we understand. Our soul understands and perceives something that our mind alone can't. Divided lines for these folks. The allegory of the cave is for these folks. But it's going to be the same story. There's going to be a mapping, one-to-one mapping here. And again, this is fairly familiar to some of you, maybe not to others. Many movies are kind of based on something similar to this. The Matrix is sort of based on something similar to this, right? You think that the world of appearance is reality till you take the other pill and realize, whoa, real reality, or something along those lines. And the whole light-dark motif really comes to the forefront here. So this starts, bottom of page 73. Behold, human beings living in an underground cave, which has a mouth open toward the light and reaching all along the cave. Here they have been from their childhood. They have had their legs and necks chained so they cannot move and can only see before them, being prevented by the chains from turning round their heads. From childhood. Now, all beliefs, habits, everything, conceptions, misconceptions, all of that stuff are much more difficult to get rid of if you've had them since childhood, right? Many people grow up believing in Santa Claus. Notice the language here as well. They don't know that Santa Claus exists because Santa Claus doesn't, in reality, objectively exist. Therefore, they cannot have knowledge. So all they're left with is a belief. Maybe a justified belief, which is opinion. Did you believe in the tooth fairy? This strange creature that for some reason purchases your teeth once they're out of your mouth. I'm messed up in the head. I like messing with kids, right? I have 3 of my own. So when I go to pick them up from school or something, believe it or not, I'm actually a nice person. And kids come up to me and want to talk to me, which is great. Kids are awesome. And so they come up to me and they say, "Oh, Mr. David, I lost my tooth." And I was like, "You lost it? Where did you lose it? You're on the playground somewhere?" They're like, no, it's right here. And I say, well, then you actually haven't lost it if you know where it is. And they say, well, I mean, it came out of my mouth. I lost it from out of my mouth. Oh, okay, so it came out of your mouth. It's not lost. It's merely out of your mouth. It's changed locations now. And they're like, yeah, I'm going to put it under my pillow, and the tooth fairy's going to come and give me money. I was like, whoa, so you're going to sell your body parts. That's interesting. Because that's what they're doing, right? This is not... Right, they use the word give. I'm going to give this to the tooth fairy, and the tooth fairy is going to give me money. That's not a giving. That's an exchange. That's an economy. Maybe Schrappe shouldn't be around kids. I don't know. Anyway, in this cave since childhood, the things that you were exposed to as a child, you take to be true until you are presented with the alternative, right? that you believe Santa Claus exists until someone comes along and says, no, look at all of the evidence, objective truth. Tooth fairy doesn't exist, objective truth, all of the evidence, the counterclaims. And even then, most folks struggle with getting rid of their previous belief, even in light of all of the evidence to the contrary. No, I'm still going to choose to believe Santa exists. In spite of all of the evidence, la 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 la, don't tell me about mom and or dad and dad or mom and mom or some adult leaving presents. No, 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 no. No, I know it's a fat guy who has a slave of elves, a workforce of elves. Again, we don't know about the economy of this situation, right? Who build toys and then they deliver them and all of that. I'm going to choose to believe anyway. I believe it because I've always believed it. We do it this way because we've always done it this way. There are weekend-long seminars for advertising execs on how to market to children. Because if they have you as a child, they've got you for life. Look at McDonald's. Look at McDonald's. Right? When you're a child, you receive a happy meal. Think about that for a moment, the concept of happiness, the good, happy, meaningful, fulfilled life in a meal, and they're giving it to you. Look, we give this to you, bam, you are now happy. We give you happiness. So regardless of what Wendy's sells or Burger King sells, Burger King obviously sells Creepy, the big guy with the head, McDonald's is always going to win because they're selling the concept of happiness. They're not selling hamburgers. They're selling the concept of happiness, right? Their logo is a smile. Another very successful company that has a smile as a logo, Amazon. Yes, it's everything from A to Z, but it's also a smile, which then indicates happiness. Anything you want, you can get from Amazon. Ta-da, now you're happy. Happiness is an extremely powerful concept. Coca-Cola sells happiness. These are three of the most successful brands in the world: McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Amazon. They're all selling happiness. They're all selling smiles as a result of their product. So back to McDonald's, right? If you receive happiness as a child by going to McDonald's, when you're a sad 17-year-old, where are you going to go? To McDonald's to get the McWhatever, right? Relive childhood, nostalgia, and all of that. And then when you become an adult out in the workforce, until most recently, right? I would see them lined up. Them who? Adults on their way to work, lined up around McDonald's to get what? Coffee. The adult version of happiness. Had them as kids, have them as adults. If you start smoking at an early age, guess what's going to be really hard to give up when you become older? Smoking. Drinking. You can name any vice you want to, but you can also name any virtue, right? If you are used to telling the truth as a child, guess what you're probably going to do as an adult? Tell the truth. Habits, building of character, so on and so forth. Again, I talk more about that in Intro to Ethics. It kind of leads us a little far afield for this course. But this from childhood thing matters. Imagine, instead of a cave, that you are in a movie theater. Remember way back a long time ago when you go to movie theaters? So you're in a movie theater, and it's dark in the movie theater, kind of like a cave. All of the light is directed toward the screen. Could you look around at your neighbors and all the other moviegoers? Sure. But do you really want to? No, you're there to see the movie. You're there to see what's presented in front of you. Especially nowadays, the chairs are so nice and comfy. You're not chained. You could get up and walk around, but again, why would you? You're there to see a movie. Make it as comfy as possible. Now imagine you've been there your entire life from childhood, and I show you Transformers, any of the 6 or 7 Transformer movies that have been out. And I ask you, do cars sometimes turn into robots and robots turn into cars? The answer is obviously yes. Because you don't have life outside the movie theater to compare it to. You presume whatever images are being fed to you, must therefore necessarily be true. Because you have nothing else to compare it to. Do some people, when they get really angry, turn into big green monsters? Yeah. I've seen the Avengers movies. Right? So if you think about a movie theater, movies therefore now are truth. They're all documentaries instead of fiction because you don't know any different. Right? Fiction only works in contrast to reality. The only reality you know is this cave reality. The only reality you know is the reality that someone else is giving you. I feel like I'm yelling now. So you're in a cave. Most folks never leave the cave because the cave is comfy. The cave is okay. It's okay enough. That's why they're trying to escape. Many people escape to the movie theater or Netflix or Hulu or whatever. They escape to their own version of a cave. When looking at houses, my wife and I were amazed at how many houses have man caves. What are man caves? Apparently they're places where men run away and escape from reality. In the basement, it's dark, it's manly, lots of wood or something, I don't know. Or I think about my friends who are gamers. And they live kind of a cave-like lifestyle. Right? They have a dark room usually because they want to be able to focus on the light being emitted from the screen, their computer screen or gaming screen or what have you. It makes for a better experience. Outside, ew, what is that? Reality, ew, what's that? These people, at least my friends in the gaming community, I'm not saying all gamers, I'm saying my friends in the gaming community, seem much more likely to accept certain conspiracy theories. Because that's out there too. That's as real on these screens as, my avatar destroying trolls or whatever. Right? And hopefully, for my gamer friends, some of them, they can work in something like IT or something where their entire existence can be done remotely. This whole pandemic thing is like their ideal existence. Ooh, I don't have to go anywhere. I'm forced to stay home. This is fantastic. Right? I can do my work. I can do my gaming. I can have everything delivered to me. This is the dream, man. Why? Because the cave is okay. It's okay enough. The cave's great. If you make the cave comfortable enough, nobody ever wants to leave the cave. There's some socio-political stuff in here too that I'm preparing to get to. The cave. Right. Now, the cave that Plato's talking about, it's not comfortable. Right? You're chained and you can't talk to your neighbors and so on and so forth. Okay. Not sure it really matters. Think about the movie Wall-E if you haven't seen that yet. Those folks aren't chained to those chairs. But they're also never leaving those chairs. What happens? They atrophy. Perchings and flights. Okay, so right, they're in this cave. They're like ourselves. Right? We all started off in a cave, just believing whatever it is that our parents or mentors or whomever, classmates, teachers, fed to us. If this is page 74. If they were able to converse with one another, which they're not, but if they were, would they not suppose that they were naming what was actually before them? There'd be consensus. They would all agree, oh, yep, cars and robots. True. When in reality, it's not, but they don't know that. That's all they've been fed. To them, the truth would be literally nothing but the shadows of the images. Remember, for Plato's example, we're actually in a cave. The light is a fire, and it's illuminating, we'll find out, some puppets and marionettes and silhouettes. We just see the images, the shadows of those things, and we presume those to be true because we don't have access to anything else. Until this guy somehow has some chains fall off and he gets up, and it's painful. For the context of the story, it's painful because his legs have atrophied. It's painful because his eyes have adjusted to looking straight ahead at that shadowed thing. And now he's walking around trying to his atrophied legs, and he sees the fire itself. That extra light's going to hurt his eyes. For the purposes of the metaphor, what he's saying is, look, it's painful to begin this journey of truth discovery. The easy way is to stay in the comfy cave. La 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 la. Of course the tooth fairy still exists. Of course Santa Claus exists. Of course, of course, of course. Why? Well, because I've always believed it to be such. Defeating previously held beliefs is hard work and psychologically painful. There's an aspect of trauma that comes with disregarding childhood beliefs. The end of innocence, and jaded adolescence, and all that stuff. Painful. But this person now sees, oh, now I see actual reality, so this prisoner thinks, because I can see the puppets and the silhouettes and so on and so forth. So that must be reality. And the other thing is just a copy of reality. He's still just here. He's at the ordinary object level. He's still in the cave. He thinks, nope, I've arrived. This is true. This is not as true. This is distant and removed from. These merely represent these things. I'm done, right? No. You ain't done. You ain't done. You think you're done, but you ain't done. Very important piece here on page 74 towards the bottom. Let's see, 1, 2, third chunky bit from the bottom. Suppose once more that he is reluctantly dragged up a steep and rugged ascent. Reluctantly dragged. He's not walking out of the cave like, la, 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 this is going to be wonderful. No. He's reluctantly dragged, kicking and screaming out of the cave. He already suffered sharp pains. He's not down for more sharp pains. Freshman year, you've already experienced sharp pains of realizing you don't know everything that you thought you knew. You don't want to experience more sharp pains by going back for your sophomore year. You don't want to be reluctantly dragged. And if you're being reluctantly dragged, it also means someone's dragging you. There's a loss of control, a loss of power here. Now notice the power structure inside the cave. I don't have control or power there either. The powers that be do. Ad execs, marketers, politicians, whomever. Spin doctors, journalists. Quite some time ago, in the world of journalism, one of the fundamental texts that all journalism students read was called Public Opinion by Walter Lippmann. The very first chapter is Lippmann analyzing the allegory of the cave. His point is, look, as journalists, we therefore have a responsibility to give the viewers, the readers, the truth. We're the gatekeepers of truth. We have to ensure that what we're saying is true and is illuminating and knowledgeable, but obviously that can get twisted quite easily. For the gatekeepers of truth, We can choose which truth to let through. We, the journalists, and so forth. But here, someone is reluctantly dragging you. Teachers. Reluctantly dragging you through the study of chemistry, biology, physics, English literature, English language, Spanish, I don't know, whatever it is, psychology, philosophy, whatever it is, we're reluctantly dragging you. And this reluctant dragging means we've already been out. We've been out, we've seen actual reality, and we're trying to get you to see it too. Reluctantly drag up a steep and rugged ascent. More pain, more irritation. But out of this then, now we're up here. Everyone can get out of the cave. Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. If one man is oppressed, we are all oppressed. If there's anyone left in the cave, we may as well all be in the cave. We've got to go back and reluctantly drag everybody out. Make them aware that okay is not okay enough. No matter how comfy the movie theater chair is, there's actual reality out there that's even better than this movie. Pain, irritation, because again, we're having to go through all the same stuff here that we did when we went from here to here. This leaving behind of previously held beliefs. And the recognition that that's all they are is beliefs. Here, finally, we can get some truth. Pain, irritation. It'll require that he grow accustomed to the sight of the upper world. Now, let's go back to the movie theater thing. So you're in the movie theater, movie's over. What you don't do, typically, is immediately leave the movie theater, take that exit, go outside on a bright sunny day to get to your car. Why not? Because it would hurt. Your eyes will be pained. You don't walk out of the movie theater and then look right up at the sun. Painful. Even if you do go outside, you're going to look down at the ground first, just like this fellow does. Just like this previous prisoner does. Looks at the ground first to get his eyes to adjust. Movie theaters are designed this way on purpose, right? After the movie is over, the house lights increase. Your eyes are adjusting gradually so that it's not painful. Then you walk out of that particular theater into the lobby, where it's what? Brighter. Preparing you for outside if it's a sunny day. You have to grow accustomed. This guy's got to grow accustomed to what he's seeing now. And so he starts again with reflections, images, representations. He looks in the water at shadows and reflections. He looks at the ground at reflections and shadows. But these are shadows and reflections of actual things, actual trees, not silhouettes of trees. And so notice how far distant and removed the shadows of these puppets are. I mean, if you have actual trees, shadows outside or reflections in ponds outside of trees versus a silhouette of a tree versus the shadow of that silhouette of a tree, gotten pretty far removed now. Instead of going to look at representational art, just go look at the thing it's supposed to be representing. Why settle for the representation? Go see the presentation of the thing. This is why in the early days of travel television, right? So-and-so is going to go to Paris to show you the sights. This was never meant as a replacement for actually going to Paris. This was meant to inspire you to want to go to Paris yourself, to see the actual objects, to have the experience, to have the sights and the smells. Sights, smells, sensations. Sights, smells, sensations. And the other ones, whatever. For yourself. This wasn't meant to replace. This was meant to inspire, to breathe into. so that you want to go yourself. It's kind of had the opposite effect in some ways, research seems to indicate. Like, why do I need to go to a football game? I can watch the product on television. It's a different experience, man. You can't high-five a stranger in your house. You can at the stadium. There's that building of community that takes place for an hour and a half or what have you. I have a lot to say about philosophy and sports too. That's a different topic for a different day. Grow accustomed to the sight of the upper world. At first, you will see the shadows best next to the reflections of men and other objects in the water, and then the objects themselves. Then you actually see the trees themselves. This is what everyone can do. This is all right here. Everyone can see the actual trees. Now he's speaking to the born philosopher to finish the story. And this is the lead up to the finish of the story. Last of all, he will see the sun. Not mere reflections in the water. He will see the sun in his own proper place, not in another, and he will contemplate him as he is. Now, okay, pronouns become problematic here. The bottom of page 74, on the top of page 75, he's personifying the sun. He's using a masculine pronoun to represent the sun, which is going to cause some problems for interpretation, potentially. Let me read the last chunky bit on page 74 again with the pronouns. Last of all, he will be able to see the sun, and not mere reflections of him in the water, but he will see him in his own proper place and not in another, and he will contemplate him as he is. Lots of hims and he's. Are we talking about the prisoner, or are we talking about the sun itself? I'll read it now, replacing the he's. Last of all, the prisoner will be able to see the sun. Not mere reflections of the sun in the water, but the prisoner will see the sun in the sun's own proper place. That one could be read either way. You may also be able to see the individual prisoner in the prisoner's proper place as well, and not in another. And the prisoner will contemplate him, the sun, as the sun is, possibly interpret the prisoner as the prisoner is. But here's where it really gets problematic if you're not clear on the he's. Top of page 75. He will then proceed to argue that this is he who gives the season and the years, and is the guardian of all that is in the visible world, and in a certain way the cause of all things which he and his fellows have been accustomed to behold. Are these he's supposed to be the sun or the prisoner? I'll read it firstly from a humanist perspective. Okay? So listen to how that goes. The prisoner will then proceed to argue that it is the prisoner who gives the season and the years, and is the guardian of all that is in the visible world, and in a certain way the cause of all things which the prisoner and his fellow prisoners have been accustomed to behold. That we become not the interpreters or the recipients of truth, but the determiners of. We, individuals, become the entities which gives the seasons and the years and is the guardian of all that is in the visible world. But that is not Plato's interpretation. That is not what Plato is getting at here. That is not Plato. Plato remembers about objective truth. That's not objective truth. The humanist understanding is all of us get together as humans and decide what's true. That's not the way these form things work. These forms are unchanging. They are eternal. They have been around before us. They will be around after us. The prisoner will then proceed to argue that it is the sun who gives the season and the years, and is the guardian of all that is in the visible world. And in a certain way, the cause of all things which the prisoner and his fellows have been accustomed to behold. The true source, the Son, the forms. Everything else derives from the forms. The forms are there. There is a form of beauty, and everything is either closer to the form of beauty or further away from the form of beauty. More beautiful things are closer to the form of beauty. Less beautiful things are further away. There is no form of ugly. It's beauty, and how close to it are you? Ugly things are far away. They're going to be down here. Pretty things are going to be up here somewhere, closer to the form of beauty. Goodness, truth, all of this stuff. These abstract, universal, unchanging concepts. Is the reason for everything else. So the only reason that there are shadows of silhouette trees is because they're silhouette trees. The only reason there's silhouette trees is because there's actual trees. The only reason there's actual trees is because there's a form of tree. I'm cheating a little bit. Let me continue to cheat just a little bit for clarification purposes. Forget about truth, beauty, goodness, heck, even forget about love for right now. When you walk into a room, no matter how weird the chairs may look, you know a chair when you see one. Even if you've never seen that kind of chair before. Why? Again, I'm going to give a Platonic explanation here. Because there's a form of chair that all chairs adhere to. And if it doesn't, then it ain't a chair. I'm not talking about specific chairs. I'm talking about chair. And here I won't be Platonic. Let's say we all have some type of understanding. Let's say it's an intellectual understanding. Let's say we all have an intellectual understanding of this chairhood, chairness. Based on previous experience, we now have this abstract concept of chair. And so we know immediately, boom, hey, this thing fits my concept of chair, I'll call it a chair. That's what we do with everything. That's what we do with these ordinary objects that we experience, is we put them into some conceptual framework, connect them up with some abstract idea derived from other experiences, so that we can experience it as a thing. Plato's just saying, look, that abstraction, that concept, that idea is more lasting than the individual thing. The concept of chair is going to survive a lot longer than any individual particular chair. It's this fascinating preschool show on PBS. I'm not sure it's on anymore. Word World. And Word World takes the word, let's say frog, but puts it in the shape of a frog. And so it's really this odd thing mentally then, right? The idea is, look, a preschooler needs to associate F-R-O-G with a frog. How do you do that? You show them a picture of a frog with F-R-O-G. But it's also messing with this idea of particulars and universals. It's showing you a particular frog. Not all frogs look like that. This is kind of an abstract, universal frog picture. But more universal than the picture is the word, frog. F-R-O-G applies to a whole lot more than this particular frog does. It's attempting to get you to more abstract thinking, while at the same time teaching you how to spell words. Right? A picture dictionary shows you the picture of a particular rock. But the word rock is more universal than that picture. Rock covers more than just that rock. That's a work of abstraction of the mind to get there, though. To understand, oh yeah, rock applies to these other like things. That's crazy. It's crazy. So we have this abstract thing. And for Plato, then even more abstract than the concept of tree is the concept of beauty, goodness, truth. because everything derives from one of those three forms. And I mentioned before, to know the good is to do the good. Once you have this epiphany of the form of goodness, you can't help but then do good. You can't be a malevolent dictator. You can't be someone who then sees this situation and decides to go back to take advantage of the cave situation. The puppet masters have not had the epiphany experience. They may have gotten close. They may have gotten here. They probably at least got here so that they could then go back. Instead of reluctantly dragging people out, they want to keep people in. And again, not every image you see is false either. Some of the images you're fed actually are true. And some of them are false. And good luck figuring out which one's which without critically thinking. That's what this is. This is a story of ascension of the soul, but it's also in part the mind, because the mind needs to begin critically thinking about life and about experience. That's why I said we haven't left behind human life and its meaning, just because we've shifted to epistemology and metaphysics. These things are necessarily related to one another, as Heidegger pointed out. Right? Human life and its meaning was the impetus for Plato to do any of this stuff. He's now just giving us an example, an analogy, an allegory, a metaphor to explain what's happening here and in our soul, wherever that is. When he remembered his old habitation, the prisoner, and the wisdom of the cave and his fellow prisoners, do you not suppose that he would felicitate himself on the change and pity them? This prisoner just had this epiphany. Whoa! This truth be to goodness thing is so amazing, I've got to share it with everybody else. And it's not that I'm sharing it. I'm not the important part here. That's the humanist read. No. The important part is the thing that I've been enlightened to. I've got to go help other people be enlightened to this thing. I've got to go back and drag people out so that they can have this epiphany too. Think about the conductors on the Underground Railroad. They had made it to freedom. But they didn't stay there. They felicitated themselves on the change and went back into the land of slavery to get more people out. Rather suffer anything than entertain false notions and live in this miserable manner. Anything. Willing to sacrifice for a cause. Because the cause is greater than the individual prisoner. It's not about, wow, look at this great thing I've discovered. Look how awesome I must be. No. Let's look at the great thing I discovered. Look at the thing. Look at the objective truth. Look at truth. Look at beauty. Look at goodness. Socio-political movements are not about the individual. It's about the movement. Now we can get into a whole thing about the role of individuals, and is it Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States, or is it strong, powerful individuals dragging everyone else along? Okay, that's a different discussion, somewhat tangential to what we're talking about. And here's what's going to happen when this guy goes back to reluctantly drag. First of all, he's putting himself in danger of getting captured again. And second of all, he's going to seem like a crazy person to these prisoners here. And so if you look at movies and books and so on and so forth, the teachers typically seem a bit crazy. Look at Moana. The grandmother is the sage. See, she's the mystic. She's the one who's doing soul talk. Right? Maybe the water does speak to you, Moana. If it's speaking, you better listen. Go. I'm the crazy lady in town. If you start talking like this, you're going to be the crazy person in town. Doesn't mean you're wrong. But for the prisoners, this is going to seem pretty crazy. No, we're good, thanks. We're okay. What are you talking about? Men would say of him that he went and down he came without his eyes, and that it was better not even to think of ascending. And if anyone tried to lose another and lead him up to the light, let them only catch the offender, and they would put him to death. Risking a lot by going back in. Risking a lot. The entire allegory is that the prison house is the world of sight. This is a prison. That's why it's a prisoner. You're a prisoner in the cave. And furthermore, this body is a prison too. This body is a prison for the soul. The soul has to try to escape as much as it can. Not that we then remove ourselves from the world. We're still beings in the world, to go back to Heidegger. And again, Heidegger comes way after Plato, chronologically. We're still in the world, but we're in the world differently after this aletheia revealed thing, right? This is a prison. The world of the senses is a prison. And it's a prison most people don't escape from, nor do they want to escape from. Again, seeing is believing. Is that all you got? You're content to rest on belief? There's a whole lot more there, Plato says. Again, I'm just speaking on behalf of Plato. A whole lot more there than just seeing, than just the world of appearance. You're choosing to stay in the cave, in the visible realm. Prison house is the world of sight. If you interpret the journey upward to be the ascent of the soul into the intellectual world, the idea of good appears last of all and is seen only with effort. Effort. This is work. This is work. A lot of people, quite frankly, don't really like work. Like, can I have the reward without the work? Right, can I have the A without putting in the effort? Can I have the MVP trophy without actually trying too hard? This is work. There's effort. And when seen is inferred to be the universal author of all things beautiful and right. There's obviously some religious parallels here. The Judeo-Christian tradition specifically. If you replace the U of son with an O of son, then you kind of have Christianity, right? The author of all things, so on and so forth. Proselytizers, right? Apologists, apostles, so on and so forth. No, don't pay attention to me. Pay attention to what I'm trying to show you over here. Pay attention to the objective universal truth. There in the beginning, there at the end, unchanging, all the stuff that we say with regards to forms. Can't really put into words, you have to have the experience of. So you can see the parallels here. So also parallels with, I have a note here, I'm reading my notes, my marginal notes here. Columbus states whole beyond measure thing. Success beyond measure. Where's measurement? Here at the mathematical level. We're trying to help you to achieve. We don't give it to you, nor is it something you necessarily earn, though you do have to work. It's something that has to happen to you internally. Success beyond measure. Here's the measuring. Or, what is it? Convenience beyond measure. Everything beyond measure. Beyond measure. But furthermore, I wanted to point out a couple more things. One, had a student ask me, is there a place then for advertising if everyone's out of the cave and we're just doing the truth thing? Isn't advertising necessarily propaganda to get you to buy stuff you don't really need? I thought about it for a while, did some research, and I read this very interesting article in an advertising magazine. Schrappe believes you should know your enemies, like Lao Tzu said, or Sun Tzu said, in The Art of War. Because advertisers know all this stuff too. Marketing execs know this stuff. They're trying to take advantage of it to keep you in the cave. Do what everyone else does, because everyone else does it. Inauthenticity. Lost my train of thought, I'm sorry. Give me a second, I'll have it back. This is what would happen in the classroom too, by the way. So I'm not going to edit this out, like I know how anyway. Yeah. So I was reading this advertising magazine. It said one of, if not the most effective ad campaign of the past over 100 years was the Volkswagen car ads of the 1960s. Now, there's a television show called Mad Men, which I think is probably on Netflix or something. Early on in season 1, does a nice job depicting this. So the 1960s is the time of glossy magazines and splash and color and all this, right? And Volkswagen's ads are a plain white piece of paper with a little Volkswagen Beetle in the middle. That's it. Now, obviously, it's saying much more than that. It's saying a lot by the juxtaposition with the big and the splashy. But what it's selling is simple. It's selling small, which is exactly what Volkswagen Beetles are. They're small cars. No denying that. Pardon me. No debating that. That's objectively true. They are. And so if you're looking for honesty, look, we have a small car. If you want a small car, think about us. That's it. Now, of course, especially now, there's a whole lot of other, primarily political baggage attached to a Volkswagen Beetle, right? A whole lot of other connotations, or a Prius or something along those lines, right? Certain neighborhoods in Columbus, there's many more Volkswagen Bugs and Priuses than other neighborhoods. And it says something about those neighborhoods as well. I think about Little Caesars. Think about what the concepts that Little Caesars is selling. Hot, cheap, ready right now. All of those are correct. All of those are accurate. They are not telling you it's a good quality pizza. They're not saying they have delicious ingredients or quality ingredients. They're not telling you they have pepperoni from end to end, edge to edge. No. They're selling you exactly what you get. It's cheap, it's ready right now, and it's hot. That's it. Somewhat refreshing, actually. No spin, but they're selling is what you're getting. I also, and I'll end with this, I'm also reminded of the hero's journey. And so, not too many people are familiar anymore. Joseph Campbell was a mythologist. And he wrote a book, Hero of a Thousand Faces. And what he did was he looked around the world at all the stories and myths and epics from around the world throughout history. And there are certain tropes, certain story types, certain archetypes that come to the forefront regardless of culture, regardless of time period. They just keep reoccurring, right? There's creation stories and water and floods and births of, Venus and so on and so forth. Another one is the hero's journey. Here's how the hero's journey goes. And again, there's some slight variation, but this is typically how it goes. There's someone, let's call him a prisoner. There's someone who feels like there's probably something more than what they're doing, but, what they're doing's okay. Maybe they're tending to a moisture farm on Tatooine, for instance. Maybe they're working in a cubicle like Keanu Reeves. Who knows, right? But life is okay. This is probably just all there is. Life's okay enough. Until something occurs, which then forces them out of that comfort zone. Something like perhaps someone reluctantly drags them out of a cave, or a pandemic occurs, or who knows what. Something happens which forces them to begin a journey, to begin a path towards something else. And hopefully early on in this path, they run across a teacher, a guru, a mentor, who helps them along the way. Perhaps this is Lawrence Fishburne. Perhaps this is Alec Guinness. Who knows? David Carradine. It could be any number of people. But it's someone who is further along the journey than you currently are. Maybe they've had the epiphany, maybe they haven't. Maybe they're a hero, maybe they're not. but they're more hero than you are because you're just starting on your journey. You're still down here somewhere. And frequently, they will tell you about reality in a way that makes no sense to you because you're so used to the cave. You're so used to appearance that you can't understand reality. So it's going to be very cryptic, right? The force, whatever that is. Or maybe you run across some little green fellow who ends all of his sentences with the verb, speaks very cryptically. Or the crazy grandma from Moana. Like, what are you talking about? It makes no sense until you've completed the journey, then you're the crazy one who's saying the same things they said. Suddenly all that crazy stuff they said made sense. So you run across this teacher who's spouting basically nonsense to you. And you're learning some stuff, even though a lot of it's not making sense. Like, I don't know why I'm doing this, but they're the teacher, I guess. I mean, it's better than what I was doing before. All right, whatever. And then there's a crisis moment. There's a climax to your arc, your story arc, when frequently you have to face your greatest fear. Now, there are a number of things that can happen when you face your greatest fear. You could internalize it, which could be a way of defeating it. You could defeat it somehow. You could succumb to it, right? Any number of things. The hero has to defeat it somehow. And until that point in time where they defeat their greatest fear internally, they're not the hero yet. No matter what heroic things they may have done up to this point, they're not yet a hero. It's after that moment that now they're the hero. The hero's journey is now a journey of an actual hero. Before it was just someone training to be a hero. Now they're the hero, now they can continue the journey and do more heroic things. And this overcoming of fear, and the journey is sort of complete at that point. These heroic things that they're now doing are just extensions of the hero that they now have become. Moana completed the journey. But she was the hero before the journey was complete. She was the hero when she picked the locket back up out of the ocean. I may or may not have seen that movie fairly recently. Right? Even though the movie's not over yet, that's the climax. That's the moment right there. Even though she'd done heroic things up to that point. She was training to be a hero, but she wasn't yet a hero. Right? Breaking her father's rules and so on and so forth. Then, this hero's journey, after the heroic thing has been done, defeating the empire, whatever it is, the hero typically goes back home. The hero is now changed. He can now return home in order to change home. Usually this person ends up becoming a teacher for the next generation of heroes. Open up a new Jedi Academy, for instance. Give other people the right pill so that they can be exposed to actual reality. All sorts of things. It's not that those who teach can't, right? Those who can do, those who can't teach. No. Those who teach have to be able to do it also, or they can't teach you how to do it. Those who teach can, and can teach it too. There are plenty of great athletes, for instance, who would probably make terrible coaches. They worked so hard, they knew what it took for them to be great, but they can't then give that to anybody else. They can't bring that out of anybody else. Most great coaches in sports were not great players. They maximized all that they had and their ability and their talent, but it was limited. And so they know what it was like to be average and work hard to be good. They don't know what it was like to be great. Great's a whole different level. Great only recognizes great. Game recognizes game. So this hero's journey, Plato is really saying, look, we're all in this hero's journey thing. We're all doing this thing, or should be doing this thing. Some of us just never get out of the cave. Some of us okay is okay enough. So we have the power structure stuff that Foucault then picks up on. And the powers that be, try to normalize everyone, keep all of us in the cave. And then you have other folks like Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. who are trying to drag all of us out of the cave. Interesting stuff. I think that's all I have to say right now. See you next time.